everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Workplaces That Work, a space where I love to bring together experts, a lot of B2B consultants, experts, founders, nonprofits around the work that they are doing that is really making an impact in the workplace. And today I have with me my friend. We've been friends, actually. We've been each other's network for a couple of years, I think. And I'm excited to be able to dive into this topic because it really brings together both of our worlds in a very interesting way. Hi, Jackie.
Lola, I'm so grateful to be here.
I love it. I love it. You already know why. Part of why this topic is also relevant to these, right? My passion for ERGs and just all of the things going on right now around ERGs and ERG leaders. How can we really make sure that their career, professional development, talent development for ERG leaders has also been part of the conversation. And so I think your focus, your theme, really ties this neatly. So I'm looking forward to exploring this with you. All right, I will let Jackie introduce herself. I don't know if I introduced myself, but my name is Lola Adeyemo, and I am the founder of EQI Mindset. EQI is from Equity and Inclusion Mindset, and our focus is employee resource groups, communities within the workplace, primarily with a lot of corporate organizations because that's my background. That's my lens that I bring in. But I also have a lot of clients in the higher ed space and nonprofit space who are looking to build their internal teams. Some of them have ERGs, some of them don't. A lot of them have like advisory groups, committees. And when you just think about an organization with multiple employees trying to bring together groups across diverse areas of functions and of identities. That's the sweet spot of people that I work with. I have a couple of workshops that I lead around intersectionality and also on leading without authority. So I think it really ties into some of the needs that we've seen with these groups. And these conversations are a huge part of how I also tap into the wealth of expertise that I know I have around me and very niche topics that we discuss. So today I have Jackie with me, and I'll let her take a minute to also introduce herself.
Thank you so much. So, with the work that I do, I bring workshops to ERGs that help accomplished professionals stop shrinking in the rooms they've already earned and start leading like they belong there. Organizations hire me to speak about what's actually costing them money. Leaders that are stuck in analysis paralysis, high performers running on fumes instead of strategy, and disappearing behind those highly polished LinkedIn profiles. I work on giving the tools that are neuroscience backed that you'll be able to use Monday morning so that you can stop having those tough conversations 34 times in your head and have them more quickly, recover quickly, and be present for the people that matter most, not just the ones that show up in your inbox. Right now, I'm working on my book launch, my first book to come out called Palatable, Profitable, and Dying Inside. This is why success shouldn't require you to disappear and the fulfillment formula that brings you back. And this is for us. This is for high performers, ambitious people, often people of color, anybody living in a space of intersectionality. So you'll see yourself in this book, and it will walk through not only what you do for you, but also how organizations are bleeding because of it and what they can do to create change.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I know more to come on the book as well, because you and I will have a follow-up conversation. But I picked this topic again, kind of tied with you work with a lot of people who are having those conversations, those navigation steps around their career, and that translation from technical skills to leadership. is the way I talk about it. But I think it's the same thing when we talk about high performance, doing a lot of work, a lot of good work. But then where you want to get to, where do you want to go through from there? What skills do you need to move from here to there, wherever that looks like for you? And so maybe my first question or theme that I wanted to explore with you is around high performance and executive readiness, right? We get stuck in that performance mode sometimes. So, can you share a little bit more about what defines high performance leaders and what the difference is with readiness?
Yeah. So we know what a high performance person looks like. They hold themselves to a higher standard. They want to succeed. They want to do well. They are managing up. They're great team players. They're all of those good things. They're meeting their deadlines. They're busy. They're producing. And that's awesome. And these are the people that we look to and say, yes, we want them to grow. But oftentimes what can happen is that they get stuck. Because in order to get to that next level, it shifts from just being busy. It shifts from producing. And then we go into instead visioning. And there are small ways that you can see the difference and notice it in yourself. And I like to look at the calendar is actually one thing. And we learn this a lot, Lola and I, and what we do every day. But a high performing leader isn't constantly busy. Their calendar doesn't have them going in back-to-back meetings all day, every day. That is a waste of their time. That's why they have team members to support them. That's why they have systems in place that can help to create change, because what they need isn't busyness. They need space and time for focus, for creativity, innovation. So that is one small piece of the puzzle, but really getting out of the mindset of I have to always be busy in order to show that I'm doing a great job.
Mhm.
It's not what it looks like.
So it looks like I love that you talked about the calendar, and I think the calendar has definitely been one that I had to learn. Because I tell people if it's not on my calendar, it's not happening, and it's not meant to be mean. It literally is. If my calendar and so I block time off to say working time,
Exactly.
and I block some days off on my calendar from scheduling. Like you can't drop meetings on my calendar on certain days, and even if I'm not in meetings, because I need those days, I need to make sure my mind is turned off in a different way on those days so I can relax.
Yes.
So I can just be in the moment. Because when you're going from meeting to meeting to meeting, it's a different way of executing.
Mhm.
There is no strategizing, there's no visioning, right? You're just acting, you're functioning. But then what comes out of each of those meetings is a bunch of action items that if you don't put time aside, you don't do it.
Exactly. They just live there in a
Right.
notebook somewhere or in the back of your head, which is going to take up space, create stress, impact your sleep, impact your performance, and how you're treating other people. You won't be able to lead in the right way.
Yeah, I love it. So when you think about performance and readiness, maybe for higher roles, maybe for more leadership, right? So for individuals that are high performing and that want to be ready to
Mhm.
lead at a high profile, what are some of the ways that you see? What are some of the gaps that you think exist, and maybe the ways to build that gap will be the second part of that question.
Mm. I think we tend to look at what we've done as the level of experience that we have. We might look at our wins, and those are all really important. But what we miss out on is the change that we can make, what we see as the gap, what we look at and say, you know what, if we could input this great idea here, look at how that would change. I think even when we think about things like interviewing, sometimes we get a little bit nervous. We want to keep our ideas close to our chest. And there used to be such a thing as IP, but who knows anymore these days. But great ideas are meant to be shared. And they also show who you are as a thought leader and as the person who can take your corporation to the next level. It's not about nodding along to everything or getting things done quicker. Yeah, there are benefits to all of that. But really, how are you going to create positive change? How are you going to shake things up? And it doesn't have to be gigantic. It's really leaning into what your brilliance is. And I think this is something that we miss out on oftentimes because we are so used to who we are as a role and as a profession that we forget and don't take the opportunity maybe to understand what our brilliance is and how we see things differently in ways that are beneficial in a corporate structure.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're saying is the mindset shift too that needs to happen before you actually put the systems in place for your career. Because I mean, as we were talking about calendar, I was remembering when I left corporate America, literally the week, my first week, I gave 3 weeks notice, and that Friday I went to drop my stuff, and I remember my first week, not having that company email. Now I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what email do I like? I literally opened a computer, my personal computer, and I'm opening my calendar and it's all empty. And I almost had like a panic attack. Like, wait, that calendar used to control my life. That my work calendar was like everything. And so, you know what I did that week? I started signing up for stuff.
Of course.
Signing up for events. I literally was like, wait, what do I look forward? Like, what do I do with my day? My calendar is too empty. And I was panicking. But yeah, it was just such a big shift because this is weird. This tells me with, my 8 to like whatever 8 p.m. was always packed with stuff because I also used the calendar to say, I have some appointments, I have everything. And when I didn't have that, it was like, who am I without that structuring my day for me?
Oh, yeah. Or, you think about somebody above you saying, well, what are you doing then?
What are you doing? Right.
What are you doing
Right.
with your time? And I
Right.
think about this oftentimes when we think about who we have conversations with. I believe that there's so much that we do as entrepreneurs that can be utilized in the corporate space, utilized with ERG leaders, with people in these leadership roles or people who are aspiring to more growth. And it can be as simple as having conversations that you don't know what the outcome is going to be. You don't know that age-old networking question of, is this person good for me? I will never forget getting phone calls from people and feeling like this isn't my role. I'm not the person they need to speak with. This is going to be a waste of my time. And how my mind has completely shifted to say, no, every conversation is a benefit because you never know what you're going to learn, what will open up for you, or a relationship that you just made.
Yeah.
There's a win for all of that. If we could look at that differently, it could change how you show up, and it could also spark ideas. Those ideas that I'm talking about of what to bring to say, this is how I want to go to the next level in my career and in this corporation, is by having this idea. And I learned it by thinking completely out of the box, by having a conversation you never would have expected.
Yeah. And even non-entrepreneurs, even if you're working in an office, this part of the feedback too, hearing that from people a lot of times, like, well, I don't know, that's not my job. My job is to do this and to do this. Well, if you have a customer coming to you to ask you about something, I don't know, that's not my job, sounds like you are disconnected from the entire process too. So there is a little bit of what's your vision? Where do you want to go with your career? This is an opportunity to explore and learn more about something else that is happening within your organization. And I think one of the best experiences I had was, and I've actually done this in two places. I did this as an intern when I worked in a manufacturing company, did a tour, like a rotational tour of the manufacturing plants. Towards the end of my internship, 6 months internship, we get to spend 2 months, from raw material delivery. It was a brewing raw material delivery to distribution. And I still remember it because even though my role was right here in this small bucket, at the end of my experience, I got to work in all of these, starting from who brings all the raw materials. This
Huh.
is where it starts. Where does it go? All these departments that I see on the screen. Now I go to work there for 2 weeks to understand what they do, up until the customer picks up the product, all the different departments. So I think that's definitely one of the places we could start, as far as building additional capabilities as ERG leaders or as employees that um, want to grow executive capability. And so from your side of things, I want to add, if there's anything else to add to that, when you think about what capability shifts do we want people to make as
Mm.
to move or aspire to move from the high performer, the technical person, to more of a leadership role within
Mm.
an organization, what are some of the things around their capabilities that they need to shift?
I think what's interesting about people who are already in ERG leadership roles is the experience that you have that might be more of a push pull with team members, people that don't have the title that you have, the amount of feedback that might come your way without potential delivery and action behind it, and noticing how things can be communicated differently to get the action that you need, how you like to receive information versus how you may be receiving it currently, what kind of stress those things cause, and also how it can stall the process of growth. And when you see that, not only getting frustrated, because obviously that's going to happen, but instead being able to communicate those needs differently and then take those as ways that you communicate differently and show up differently in your current role. And it just makes this incredible internal pivot where your thoughts, your feedback, your insight, the way you direct things becomes more executive because you're seeing that big picture and you're knowing what is needed, not only for long term, but also in short term for action.
Right, right. Yeah. And I think for internal leaders also missing that point of seeing the connection of what you're already doing.
Mhm.
You do have an additional role at the company. If you take on an ERG leadership role, you might need to grow into some things, but you technically have a second job where you can learn something different. You can choose to show up at the ARG with a different focus than your day job. There are people that the roles, the leadership roles and responsibility they take with their ERG is not just the ERG leader. So there are
Mhm.
ERG leadership group teams that have multiple roles on like the board, the marketing lead, the communication lead, the lead, the co-lead, right? So depending on what you choose as your interest and what you want to take responsibility for, you're doing something. And so a lot of times it's missing translating that experience to your day job and your
Mhm.
big career vision. As you said, I think one of the things you said earlier is visioning,
Yes.
and maybe that's the process a lot of people miss. As you said, you are doing the work, you're doing what you are hired to do, and you're getting paid. There's that, but there's also how are you putting removing the filters and allowing yourself to envision where you want to go next. Where do you see your career going to?
And what I have to say is that this is not easy. And I really just want to name that and let you know that it's okay if it can be very confusing,
Mhm.
because this is another example of why representation matters. We don't see it, we don't know what's possible.
Right.
And our brains work in a way that limit us. So we only see and relate back to something we've seen before. Possibility thinking and visioning is a skill set that you can build. And, I think about when I left corporate, I spent 20 years in sales and marketing. And what was the precipice moment, prior to leaving, it was like 6 months prior, is I found a company that I believed in, that I felt so deep in my soul I wanted to work for. They ended up being a client later, but I went to them, to their CEO, something I'd never done before, and said, "I want to work for you. This is what I do." And she says, "Oh, I thought you did ABC." Yeah, yeah, I do. But this is what I can do. And I'll never forget, because we had a conversation a month or so later, and she said, "Jackie, you are so much more than sales." And I had no idea what that meant. And I thought, "What are you talking about? This is what I'm an expert in." I didn't see anything else in front of me that could be possible. And that happened during career mapping too. I just couldn't understand what I was supposed to do, often in places, because it wasn't out there outlined for me. There wasn't a way to explore. And that's the thing that we miss, the opportunity in terms of where to get yourself into that next executive level, is this desire to learn and see differently.
Mhm.
When we start to explore and learn more and don't limit ourselves based on, this is what I've done, this is what I know I'm good at, or this is what terrifies me, so no thank you. All of a sudden, doors, windows, slides open up, and our world just gets bigger. That's where possibility lives, is in the actual learning and exploring, getting curious.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Let's do a little bit of organizational feedback, because I feel like we we are talking a lot more about the responsibility that we have
Mhm.
as individuals who are in individual contributor roles or technical roles, right? That aspire to go somewhere else, somewhere different with their career, higher, or make a shift across, depending on where your vision and your map takes you. Where do you see your career going? And then what are the steps that you could take to get there? The steps can look very different, from, volunteer roles to mentorship to a program or a coaching, whatever that looks like, right? If you don't see it, as you said, there's a little bit of visioning, representation, mapping out, but then there's all the action to get there. And so I know that Jackie does a lot of that work, one-on-one with individuals as well, in addition to working with companies. And so I wanted to make sure we talked about that. There's a part of, when it comes to career development, when it comes to moving from technical to executive level, there is a part of that the ownership really falls on the person, right?
Yeah.
With guidance. And we definitely are not missing that out. But then there is the organizational side of things, which is sort of like the shift we want to make now, is what is the role organizations have from this? Maybe calling out what are some of the things that organizations misidentify when it comes to readiness. How
Mhm.
do companies maybe get it wrong as far as identify high potential um, candidates for roles?
Yeah. So I think they're seeing some of the habits that we're talking about this is a really good producer. Maybe they're a really good individual contributor. Maybe they're great at managing their team, and I don't want to lose them in that spot, but how are they showing up? And it's so vague, right? Hearing how are they showing up? Or you'll hear things like, they're just not ready. I don't know. And so what's happening is, because this piece isn't being developed in team members, the organization isn't spying them and saying, I spying them and going, listen, that's somebody we want. And so we want to keep them. How do we develop them?
Right.
Then what they do is they look outside, and there, increases your recruitment costs. And also it's demotivating for your team. The people who are doing the work, who are loyal, who are the high performers, are not getting the promotions, or they're hitting a plateau. This is where there's opportunity to develop, to give them these tools that are missing so they can go to that next level.
Right. That readiness that you're talking about, you can actually invest in the readiness.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so often you hear things like, well, business development is attending a networking event, or, occasionally we'll do a training of some sort, or there's the online library that they can access. Come on. I don't have a great comparison to it, but I'm sure we can think of one. But it is so sad, because really business and personal development go hand in hand. And this kind of work at an individual level is supporting that next growth. It is changing the game. And if you've already got somebody right there, you've worked so hard, you've invested so much time and energy and money into someone who is already doing amazing things for you, why wouldn't you keep that growth going?
Yeah. Why we do the outsourcing, and as somebody that has also been working with HR leaders and being on the culture platform, I think some of it is also like the way we've designed our systems, where internal mobility is, there's so much barrier around it. We're not seeing the talent before us, because the way we are doing our searches is very external focused, or the way we have built our systems, we're not capturing some of these internal talent the right way. And I've seen where recruiters will say they found somebody on LinkedIn who works at their company, and there wasn't a system for you to recognize this person from your company, but you found this person on LinkedIn and then realized that they work already with your company, right? And they have everything. So why didn't your system track it enough in a way that you can identify your high potential internally, right? Because if you are seeing them on LinkedIn, somebody else is seeing them. And so again, how are we building our systems? We can have a whole different conversation on the ways we've designed our system so that we can spot talent, so that we can develop potential inside before we need it, right? And so there's a lot of blind spots in there, and there's a lot of misidentifying readiness with performance. And maybe when it comes to organizations and the misses, is there anything else you want to share that before we talk about internal development pathways?
Absolutely. So I think, one of the big things that I'm talking about in my book is around palatability culture. And this is that nodding of head, and it can be, you've spoken about it so amazingly in terms of confidence and what immigrants experience. It can look like being polite, giving respect to the person with authority, can look like showing up as a team player and just going along, doing your best. but then you're being passed over because you're not making noise. And oftentimes, as we talk about, these people are your high performers. They're doing an amazing job for you, but they're not getting the informal sponsorship. They're not getting those hallway conversations. They're not staying late for drinks. And maybe their difference is creating a disconnect.
Right.
And so this becomes a long-term bleed. This is where you lose your potential and you thin out your pipeline.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think the last thing I wanted to make sure we touch on is, of course, practical shifts. So a lot of things around what can organizations do differently as we think about the people that already work with us, the people that are high performers, the people that already do the work, they're already within your organizations, they're connected, they're here in your workplace. And then we're thinking about I talked with Liz a couple of weeks ago about succession planning and what companies and leaders should be thinking of and how that is a mindset shift as well. Not emergency planning, but succession planning, a deep planning that really is thinking about developing the leadership capabilities within your organization and preparing people for what readiness looks like. And so, do you have any tips for leaders, any tips for HR leaders, and maybe people managers as well on how to assess differently, on what to do differently with talent, internal talent?
Yeah. So I would say, how often are your leaders speaking about career progression or succession planning with their team members? This isn't a annual, performance review
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
This is a one-on-one opportunity, and it's also group time for inspiration, your team meetings.
right.
Are ideas being challenged? And are you creating spaces where they can be and it feels safe to do that? A big part of what's missing is safety and security. And it happens on both sides, and it has a lot to do with what's going on internally within us. So, creating a space of emotional regulation. And I know that that sounds really big, and we're thinking, oh my gosh, how is everybody going to do that? And are we all this touchy feely culture? No. And yes. But regulating your nervous system helps to regulate your emotions and how you approach things, and also how you receive things. So if your stressed out leader is trying to just hand off tasks and they get asked a question, they lose their patience, it's normal. And it's also not creating the environment that develops C-suite potential or develops innovation.
Yeah.
So nervous system emotional regulation for each person, these are things that people need to understand and learn, and we can talk through some tips on what that could be. Sometimes it's as simple as 3 deep breaths. And that can start to create your change.
I love it. There's something you just said now. You talked about developing innovation, and a lot of leaders when we're talking about the capability of ERGs, like selling points for them. It's like, oh, when these employees feel safe and engaged, they're going to be more innovative. We like that word because that sounds like a business result. Right. That sounds like something we can get behind. We want people to be more engaged if that engagement is going to lead to more innovation.
Mhm.
But when we talk about we want people to be more engaged, we want people to grow because that's going to lead them to be more executive ready,
Yeah.
and pipeline ready, and deep leadership engagement ready. We don't see that correlation because we are not seeing that investing in people and their development is going to benefit us long term, especially the people that already work with us. And I think it's one and the same. I think it's the same thing. I think
Mhm.
when you invest with people and you're thinking long term, part of it should be thinking about how they will be ready to lead, how they will be ready to manage people, how they will be ready to execute at that level where ideas and strategies coming up really quickly, right? That's innovation
Exactly.
as well. So thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you for joining me for this conversation today. Any final thoughts before we close out, Jackie? And I let you get back to the rest of your day.
Mm. I want to just give a great shout out to ERG leaders because this is such important work and it changes the experience for the individual, but also the experience for the company. It creates a sense of value, belonging, and psychological safety that we need more of, and honestly builds a loyalty that I think we miss. I feel like loyalty is one of those things that I don't know, did it leave with manufacturing back in the day? It's such a beautiful thing to hold on to and to
Yeah,
grow.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for the work you do with organizations as well as with individuals around career readiness, executive readiness. And thank you for bringing this conversation to the ERG space with me as well, because that's all about our culture, the corporate culture as well. If you're looking to work with Jackie to learn more about what she does, what she offers, stay connected on LinkedIn. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I will drop our email, our contact information in the chat as well. Thank you for your time today, Jackie.
Thank you, Lola.